Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Slow Flowers Show. I'm Deborah Prinzing. We have such a special treat in store for you today. We have a return guest, Frances Palmer, good friend of Slow Flowers and such an inspiration. Hi, Frances. It's good to see you.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, yes. And we have a reason, and that's because of the publication of your new book. So we're going to show everybody a little preview of that and talk about how it came together. Because I think, Frances, your reputation is as an artist and a potter, but I don't know. I think the flower growing is sort of eclipsing your ceramic art. What's going on? Like your garden is really, it's like a daily practice for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Especially now that we have to get the dahlias in and it's going crazy now. So.
Well, let's put the book up on the screen and I want to share it with people so we can hear from you exactly what inspired the creation of Life with Flowers, Frances Palmer, Life with Flowers, Inspiration and Lessons from the Garden. This book is out on, I want to say May 13th. Is that correct?
Yes, May 13th.
Okay, great. So plenty of time to pre-order it now and get your plan to purchase it at your favorite independent bookstore. We'll share the link in the show notes as well.
Okay.
How do you describe this book, Frances? I mean, is it truly just your life with flowers, from a personal point of view?
Yes, very personal, because I felt, after I finished Life in the Studio and I thought, okay, great, I've finished that book. Leah Ronan at Artisan came back to me and said, well, now that you've done the studio, would you please do the flowers as sort of a companion to the first book? And I was a little daunted, I have to admit, because there are so many books about how to grow flowers, how to arrange flowers. And so I felt that the only way that I could write this book was completely from a personal point of view, because that's what I know. And I'm not the most, I have a lot of experience as a gardener, but I'm not, that isn't my métier. It's not the way I earn my living. So I earn my living as a potter, but the flower side of things have become so intertwined with my ceramic process and business that it's equally important.
I couldn't agree more. And I thought the way that you photographed this book, you're putting equal weight on your decision for the vessel and then what goes in it. And I'm like, what comes first? Like, it depends on the season, probably, right?
Yeah, it is definitely a dialogue back and forth, because sometimes I'm making the pot because I see something like a bearded iris that requires a very specific shape, or the roses are happening where you want a footed bowl. So I'm looking at what's coming along, but also, since I'm making ceramics for people for orders, and I always document everything before it leaves the studio. If I have a load of work coming out of the kiln, then I have to go find the flowers that I'm going to use to document them.
I love it. So exciting. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Life in the Studio. That book is so beautiful. We've had you on the podcast to talk about that lovely book, and you were a featured speaker at the Slow Flowers Summit in 2022. And there are echoes of your lecture, which everyone loved so much, in this book, and we'll talk about it when we get to those pages. I've put many of the pages up on the screen. We're not going to show everything because we don't have 3 hours to go through it, which I would love. But that's to tease you, listeners and viewers, to go get your own copy. Maybe we can start, Frances, with the table of contents, the way you've organized the book. It is, I would say, like sophisticated seasonal. Like here, when I did the little Slow Flowers book, it was spring, summer, fall, winter. But you have a vocabulary for how you describe moving through the year in your garden.
Well, again, going back to the idea that it's kind of a personal view on how I think about the flowers. I do, and I say this either in the introduction or one of the essays, to me, it's like a tapestry, and also having having everything right outside my window here, I can see things that are starting to bloom in their full maturity, and then they start to fade. And as that's happened, I've kind of orchestrated so that something coming down the pike at all times. And so rather than just say spring, summer, fall, winter, we came up saying, we being my editor, Ellen Morrissey, and also Bridget Monroe Itkin from Artisan, we wanted to think of a way of dividing the flowers, not quite so cut and dry. So we came up with these sort of old world terms about, which I think are really beautiful and a little bit unusual, to divide up the like early spring, early summer, early fall, and then winter. So these 6 divisions are really helpful for kind of, and then of course we list the flowers under each one. So
I love it.
The pre-vernal, the vernal, the estival. I'm looking at your screen too, because I don't have the book right in front of me. Serotonal, autumnal. I mean, I just think they just have a whole nuance rather than just keeping it into the 4 seasons that everybody commonly thinks about.
I think it's so smart because gardeners understand this. Gardeners know there are 6 seasons because, and there is that we're always anticipating what's to come. And, many flower books ignore the winter and ignore the late autumn. And you've shown people how they can celebrate it. So anyway, I love this. I love your reference to these terms as old world, because you have such a point of view of art history in some of the references in your pottery to ancient shapes and textures, right?
Right. And also in the book, I mean, a lot of the ways that I choose the flowers that I've included in the book, because they have some point of reference to me, not just like, oh, this is a rose or this is a bearded iris, but not only do I plant the bearded iris because they're so incredibly beautiful, but they do have these art historical references. And I really made a very concerted effort to include all of these different archival photos. I would have put in, I could have put in one for every flower, but of course I wasn't really allowed to do that, but as much as I could. And then I had to go and search down the rights to include them. And some of those were more challenging than others, but I kind of held my ground. And especially the one of the Charles Jones bearded iris, that was a real rabbit hole, but we did eventually get the permission to include that. And also the Andrew Wyeth watercolor, the Edward Steichen delphiniums. I mean, these are, so it's not just, I like this flower, I'm planting this flower, but there's a whole like process in my brain, kind of an unspoken association of these flowers. And that was the challenge for me in writing the different sections, is how to get something that was so interior down on the page, and it not just about, okay, this is how you grow this, but this is what it means to me.
I love it. Well, let's move through the pages. And when we get to the section on that you title Photography and Flowers Go Hand in Hand, let's talk a little bit more about that. These are just some of the opening images, and just your exuberance for putting color together. It never ceases to inspire me. I look at your Instagram feed, and you're posting almost every day. And you're like, no boundaries, no limits. You don't have a client to please. So I love that you put things together that, are verboten, like, I don't know. These are fabulous. So I can't think of an example, but sometimes you think, wow, would a bride shy away from that, or a client?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm just going for color and what's happening. And I just feel like there's nothing you can do that can go wrong, because they're just so incredibly beautiful.
Yeah. Like this image on the left, I just want to draw people's attention to it. The way, a lot of us hear terms about scale and proportion and balance, and it's really hard to describe what that means. But I feel like this arrangement is so appropriate for the scale and the weight of that vessel. Like I don't even know how how the top of that vessel looks, but it's obviously wide enough to hold all of those flowers. But
Yeah,
the base kind of balances it out.
right. It's actually not that large a bowl. It's a wood-fired I love, and it somehow it got damaged, so I did some kintsugi on it, but I'm not sure if I just anyway, I had it in the studio. And I love this photo because it's late in the season. I think it was October. So you still have the dahlias, but you still have the roses and the
Wow.
nasturtiums and the salvias and the marigolds, but the chrysanthemums are starting. So, so to me, it was just, and I can see the cosmos. And so this was just one of those great opportunities to throw everybody into the bowl because they were there, and just great color. So
Yes, like you may not know each other well, but today you're all blooming, so you get to play. I love that.
exactly.
That's fun. And this is a great image, a 2-page spread from the book.
This is the round garden. So
Oh,
this is a photo that was done by a great photographer, Dean Hearn, who's again one of these photos that I had to get permission to use. This was from an article in British House and Garden in 2020, and this was a view of me standing in the round garden from the second floor window of my studio. And this was taken, I guess, obviously in September when the dahlias are at their height, and I can see in the background that very tall one is the dahlia. Now, of course, the name of it. It's one of the species dahlias, one of the early ones, and it gets so tall that it actually grows in California. But it never actually blooms here because by the time the buds form, it's already like November, so the days aren't long enough. So.
but you grow it anyway.
Well, I finally given up because it just took up a lot of real estate for no flowers. So I said, okay.
I remember the old timey master gardeners when I was training as a master gardener they were growing that just because it was such a curiosity, in terms of the species. But that round garden is remarkable, and I see the fencing in the background, and I remember visiting that. But I was visiting you in June, and the dahlias weren't exploding like this. So you don't barely see the shape of the garden because you're swimming in dahlias here.
Yeah.
I love that you included that.
Yeah, I love that photo.
Okay, and then here's the tennis court garden. Actually, you could see, people can see that Frances and I talked about this in the last interview.
I chose this particular photo because not that it's indicative of what it looks like now. It's so chaotic, and this was a more civilized image so that people could actually see the raised beds because what's happened over time. So I think this was taken like over 10 years ago. This was for a Martha Stewart shoot. And what's happened in the meantime is that the tennis court surface has cracked. So there's a lot of volunteers in the cracks. And also I started growing the David Austin roses in flower pots. So there are flower pots that run down the length of the tennis court. So it's hard to photograph because it is so chaotic. So I thought I would use this, even though it's not the most accurate. I also don't grow vegetables anymore because there's this wonderful organic farm just down the road that I can buy my vegetables, and all the real estate is for the flowers.
Oh, I love it. But it is a good illustration of how a raised bed garden could be arranged. Yeah, I love that. That's fun. Okay, so you did refer to this inspirations from the garden world when you were speaking at the Slow Flower Summit. Just walk us a little bit through your approach to this and why you wanted to touch on this in kind of at the opening pages of your book.
Well, I just feel that anybody who travels a gardener and a flower person and they see other gardens, it's just inevitable that you walk away with ideas. And this is a photo I took of Great Dixter, I guess two Septembers ago, when I was able to go and actually stay with Fergus Garrett in the house. I stayed in Christopher Lloyd's mother's bedroom. It was pretty.
Oh my gosh.
And I could get up at dawn because nobody was there and walk around the garden. And what inspired me about Great Dixter is Fergus's use of the combination of annuals and perennials and everything is planted in such abundance. And so even though I don't have that kind of space in my garden, it just gave me so many great ideas and things that I'd like to try. And, it was just thrilling to kind of see his hand over the entire property and how beautiful everything was.
I could also see this informing how you design in a vase because of the layering and
Absolutely.
the transparency of some flowers.
Yeah.
Very fun. So that's a kind of gives people a point of view of how you are borrowing constantly from gardens and from art history.
The photo in the top left, that is a picture of my friend Charlie McCormick's flower room, which actually they moved last fall to it looks like an incredible property up on one of the Orkney Islands. But he has a great collection of Constance Spry Fulham pottery. And I love studying the pottery shapes and how they're just so conducive to arranging. And he's so clever about everything. So I took a photo of that to include. And also down on the right, again, one of these archival photos is a photo of Cedric Morris's bearded iris garden at his property at Benton End, which has now been taken over by the Garden Museum, and they're restoring the house and they're trying to restore the gardens. So that's very exciting. And he was a master breeder of bearded iris. There's a whole line of bearded irises named after him, which unfortunately haven't really made it into the United States. But still, again, these things that are constantly worrying in my brain as I'm wandering around looking at the flowers.
I love that you're confessing to a love of a bearded iris, because I think a lot of people are cheering along with you.
Yeah.
Pre-vernal, would you say that are you still in the pre-vernal stage?
I feel like we are. We're moving out of it. That my hellebores are blooming now, and all the fruit trees, my Elizabeth magnolia is blooming now. So I would say we're right there. But I'm going to be putting in my dahlia tubers next week. So we are definitely moving out of that early spring mode.
Wow. The way that you've organized these 6, kind of ancient seasons is by what you're harvesting and what you're seeing in the garden, and then you're displaying them in your beautiful pottery. So otherwise, you start out by saying January, February, and early March in Connecticut can be dark and dreary, with weeks on end of gray sky and gray ground. And so then you're looking to these spring ephemerals like the snowdrops.
Right. Yeah, the funny thing about this photo is I can see the patch exactly where those snowdrops came up. And so for that photo, and often what I do is I'll go out and I'll dig them up while they're blooming and put them in a bowl. And then once they fade, I take them and put them back in the ground. And they're just happy as clams. It doesn't bother them at all.
Oh my gosh. This is the benefit of having your studio basically in steps away from your garden.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's great.
What is this particular type of glaze on this beautiful bowl?
So that is a high fire translucent porcelain with a celadon glaze, and those bumps come from when I'm throwing the bowl. I'm literally poking out those things with my finger as soon as it's thrown, because you have to do things to porcelain right away. Otherwise, it's not very cooperative.
I love it. It's like one of a kind. Even if you had a series of them, they would, none would be the same.
Yeah. Coming at, like, the bumps sort of talk to the flower heads a bit.
Yes. There is a little bit of whimsy, because not that they're echoing the exact shape,
right?
But the light, the way the light plays on those.
Yeah, exactly.
Here you've got some crocuses. You move into the fritillaria. This is a fabulous composition.
Okay.
And you're just like growing these thinking, oh, I need a dark glaze to highlight them,
I think in this particular photo, I was having an exhibition of the wood-fired pieces at the Madu Garden Conservancy out in Sagaponack. I don't know if you've ever been out there.
I've been there once. Yes, I love it.
So whimsical. And so when these pieces came out of the kiln, the fritillaria were blooming in the garden, and they're just like, to me, those, especially the imperialis, are kind of like Horton Hears a Who. They're so exotic and kooky. So I just thought, because the glazes are so drippy and the colors were so unpredictable, that it was a perfect combination to put in those tall fritillaria.
And then you have the backdrop that just kind of unifies it.
Exactly.
Is that centerpiece, that center vessel, have 3 openings or 2? I can't quite tell from this.
It has 2.
2, okay.
Yeah.
It is very Horton Hears a Who. It's sort of like the ears.
Yeah.
That's so pretty. I love it. Well, we got to keep going or we're going to get too far behind schedule. In this same season, you're talking about your ornamental flowering branches, and all of which you use so beautifully. So is this like a witch hazel in the left?
Yes. Yeah.
And most people are using an upright vessel to hold the branches in place and not have a mechanic. But I'm wondering, how did you create this arrangement? Did you have some kind of
metal flower frog in there? Yeah.
Stunning.
I mean, that's the only sort of device that I usually use. Most of the time I'll have branches or something supporting the pieces, but I don't use tape. I definitely don't do Oasis, as we know. I try to keep the mechanics real.
And the other thing I just love that you do so well, like when we just looked at that composition of 3 fritillaria types in vessels, but this sort of monobotanical arranging gives you so much pleasure. You don't need to make it busy.
Well, I mean, I think the reason why I do that so often is because I'm just so blown away by the beauty of the singular flower, that I just kind of want to celebrate, just look at what's there and not always have to worry about this extravagant arrangement.
Yeah, we need to give ourselves more permission to do that.
Yeah.
Stunning. And then just some other shots with remarkable vessels, just one of a kind approaches to, like the one on the left with the 2 different colors of handles. I just love that so much.
Okay.
And the one on the right is so quirky. Did you plant the muscari in it, or how did that come?
I actually, those are held up. I took some raw clay and put it in the bowl, and
it's your own type of flower frog.
Which, of course, you have to. It doesn't last, but it's a great temporary solution, because I wanted to have that ombre of muscari because I love them so much. Yeah, when I was doing the book, when we first talked about doing the book, I thought about running out and getting all different kind of glass vases and all different kinds of vases, because it's. But then I thought, that's not what I do. I don't worry about other vessels. It is, as we talked about in the beginning, it's this conversation between my work and the flowers. So I kind of abandoned that idea of having extraneous vases just for the sake of having them, and just sort of leaned into, what do? I work with my work and I work with the flowers.
The piece on the right, have you made this shape often, and how do you even describe it? I can't stop staring at it.
It's the only one that exists. I'm looking at it right now. It's in my studio. I never sold it. It's bisque porcelain. It's high fire porcelain. And I can't even remember what made me think about it. It's just like this tiny little narrow piece that I folded all the clay and kind of stuck it on there. Yeah, it's got a lot of whimsy to it. But it's complete. I've never done another one like it, actually.
But, if you showed that to me and said, what should I put in this? I would probably be at a loss. And the selection of the muscari is so perfect, because you could really mask them, because their stems are so slender. You can really go for a mass approach in there, back to the monobotanical.
And I think I originally used it for Lily of the Valley, which is the same scale as the muscari.
Very good point. A little celebration here of all your daffodils. So fun. Look on the right, are you using like hairpin frogs there?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So there's one photo in the book without a Frances Palmer vase.
Yeah, I think so. That you caught it.
It's funny. I was thinking as you were speaking about like not going out and buying vases and whatever. Most people give florists vases as gifts. I receive a lot of vintage vases, and I'm thinking the best gift to give you would be a bag of bulbs or a rare plant. You don't need containers or vessels. You got that covered. So don't show up empty-handed, but bring something that Frances can plant.
Exactly. That's true.
Yeah. I think I just liked this photo, and I think you talked about gifting flowers or something like that when you had this in the book.
So people always ask me, do you sell your flowers? I don't really. I grow them because they bring me joy. But if you came over for lunch or something and I have flowers growing like the dahlias or the daffodils or anything, you will leave with flowers. I give flowers away all the time. I'd much rather share them.
Sure.
So I really just grow them because I have to.
Yes, I love it. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's the best gift you can give people. The hyacinth, to get these arrangements, you have to be growing hundreds of hyacinth bulbs.
No, but the good thing about hyacinth is that they come back every year. So I do occasionally add them, but that could possibly be my entire harvest. I mean, it's not, but I don't plant a lot of them. I do love all the colors. The photo on the right, I paired, again, going back to the art history, with this Danish painter that I love called Wilhelm Hammershøi, or it's Hammerskøi, I'm not sure which is the correct pronunciation, but his palette is very much of this gray, pale blue, sort of just this ethereal interiors. And if you actually stand in front of the painting, it's quite intense. And so when I took that photo on the right and the light was coming up, that was early February, and I was upstairs in the studio where the light comes in when the sun comes up, and it was that very cold February winter light in Connecticut. And so I really wanted to have that painting in the book as a companion to show what I was thinking about when I constructed that photo.
Yes, it's sort of like that very northern watery light.
Right. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And one of my kids, my son and my daughter-in-law, live in Stockholm. So we spend a lot of time in Sweden, not Denmark, but again, that kind of Scandinavian feeling is so it's hard to articulate, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Wow. That's gorgeous. And the light, the way it just drapes across that scene is so stunning. I thought this was like so charming to show that the traditional way that people display auriculas. Did you create this little theater on the right with a wooden box?
Well, so the photo we could be here all day because I can tell you everything that I thought of behind each photo in the book.
This is why I love interviewing you, because our garden listeners are grooving on this so much. I love it.
So the photo on the left of the auricula you must be familiar with Mary Delaney, right?
Yes.
She's the English woman who came from sort of a well-to-do family, very interesting. Anyway, when she was 72, she decided to start making these cut paper florals that are unbelievable, and most of them are in the British Museum. So the photo on the left of the auriculas was very much inspired by her technique. And then the photo on the right of the auricula theater, I had gone to I think they call it Sissinghurst Garden Castle Garden now. Mm-hmm. But there was, when we were waiting online to get into one of Vida Sackville West's, I think it was her bedroom, there was a hutch very similar to this on the wall with spring, like I think it was crocus and not auriculus, but early spring bulbs. And I was like, oh, this would make them perfect auricula theater. But I didn't have a measuring tape with me. So I used my phone and I made notes of like, it's like 4 phones wide and 6 phones high and 2 phones deep. And then I came home, and my friend who lives in Weston, who's a woodworker, I had the photo. I took many photos, and then I had all my phone measurements, and he made this for me out of old wood.
It's so great.
I know, I love it.
And then the clay pots are just kind of in a way, they're a nod back to the old terracotta that you would see, but the height is so unique, and they're more modern in a way.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
I love throwing that party. Anyway, it was fun. I had a great time.
Yeah, now you need to travel with a little tape measure in your handbag.
Oddly enough, I usually do because I bring my knitting.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right, folks, we're going to go through Vernal, and then we're going to wrap it up because I so love this. I just could talk to you all day about your thinking. Vernal then would be sort of like true spring. Is that okay?
May and June.
Oh yes, and your bulbs. So when you get like a little carryover from hyacinth from one season to the next, but I guess that's part of it. It doesn't stop.
That's
right?
what I'm saying, is that you get this one weaves in and one weaves out. So my tulips are just starting out in the garden. The lilac hasn't bloomed yet. So, and the bearded iris haven't even popped up yet. So and the lilac season here is quite short. It's like a week before they come out, and then they quickly fade. And then I have, when I figure out the tulips, I try to have like the early ones, which are blooming now, and then sort of the May, and then I can catch the last tulips just as the bearded iris and the roses are starting.
I love that integration of how you're thinking about when I'm choosing a flower, who does it, what do I pair it with at the beginning of its life, and what is it moving into? So fun. And you are well known for your, is it the term tulipier? Is that
tulipier? I mean, the Delft company, the Aronson Delft ware that sell all those incredible antique Delft from the 17th century, they call them spouted vases.
Okay, that's good to know.
Vases. So again, this photo. So when we were talking about the design of the book with Bridget and Ellen, we came up with the idea that we would show the flower as it is in my garden, and then we would show it how I think about it in the vase. So every flower has sort of a garden and a vase. But, a lot of the flowers that I grow, getting back to the hyacinths, I don't have huge amounts. But if I don't have a lot of them, I definitely have enough to make an arrangement. So that's so some of the flowers in the garden aren't, some of them are a lot more verbose than others.
Sure.
That's just how it goes.
The allocation of space changes depending on all kinds of factors.
The success. I mean, some I can do better than others. It's really the reality.
Back to the hyacinth, are they in a pot or in the ground?
They're in the ground.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really great. I guess the nice thing about having both the circular round garden and the tennis court garden, there is fencing. So
although bearded iris can live outside the fence, they don't seem to bother them, or peonies. But they're, you can count on your hand the flowers that the deer won't eat. But what you're showing me now is the archival that I was so adamant about having. So here on the left is this daguerreotype, and they don't even know who did it, but it's one of the early, I think it's like 1849. So I'm fascinated by early photography processes. And then the bearded iris on the right is this Charles Jones photo that I was referring to earlier, where it's just, he was a gardener who, these photos were just taken to document what he grew. And somebody found them in a trunk at an antique show, the prints, but then all the glass negatives were broken and and missing. So anyway, so part of the rabbit hole to get that photo is that the gentleman who found the trunk in, I guess it must have been in the 1980s, I had to get to him to get permission to use this photo, but I had to go through a gallery. The gallery contacted him, but then I had to contact him directly, and he gave me permission finally. Like, we were down to the last moment before.
Oh my goodness.
Before they said we can't get the rights. I'm like, no, I've got to have this photo in the book.
Well, you're a researcher, so you have the skill set. It's just time consuming, and then hopefully he's going to be a fan for life now that his precious.
I have to send them a book. Thank you for reminding me.
Well, this is the conversation you alluded. You really spent time talking about when you gave the talk for the Stillflowers Summit audience about how, as I recall, you showed that flowers are often the subject of photography, and like that is photography and the flowers go hand in hand as well, even from the early days. And these are good examples of that.
Yeah. And I'm doing, I don't know if we have time to talk about it, but I'm going to have an exhibition in San Francisco in May, where I've collaborated with a photographer who does camera obscura, Richard Leroy, who's an English photographer, and I have made the vases that he's using in his photography. So that's kind of another tangent I'm going down, where that's just been super fun and really unusual.
Oh, that's so exciting to know about. So that's coming right up then.
Yeah.
Well, I'll try to get the link to that exhibition and share it in our show notes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to mention, and this is the delphinium photo?
Steichen, Edward Steichen. He was one of these men who was, he was part of a group of photographers around the turn of the century in the early 1900s. And he was just on top of every single advancement in color in photography. So he was one of the first color photographers. And then he, fast forward, he ended up being one of the first curators of photography at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. But he also lived 5 miles from me, and he was an expert on growing delphiniums. So these are his delphiniums that he put in the Museum of Modern Art. And they're, I had to get permission, and I struggle with delphiniums, but I figure that if somebody 5 miles from me can be an expert, of course he's long dead, I should just persevere. So
yes, you should. I love that. That's so great.
Aspirate. And then of course on the right, I have a few of the how-tos in the book. And one of them is making an anthotype, which is a great process because it's totally benign, something you could do with children, where you make a photo emulsion using plant material. What I used here actually were red geraniums, and then you mix it with some grain alcohol and you paint the paper, and then you put plant material. I think what I used here, I can see, were tulips and daffodils, and then you expose it out in the sun. So I tried to include a few projects that I actually do and weren't too difficult to explain.
What we saw in the prior image began as this project with this.
You can see the red color of the geranium flowers, because I have them all upstairs, all the geraniums. So I just cut the flowers and I mashed them up with a mortar and pestle and a little bit of grain alcohol, and you brush the solution onto the paper, and then you put your plant material on the emulsion and you put it under a plate of glass and you stick it out in the sun, and you get this great faint. I mean, it's a little faint, but whatever. That doesn't matter.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, you have a few cooking recipes and these sort of creative projects integrated in the book, and I love it because you did that in Life in the Studio too. You had recipes.
Yeah.
It's the whole Frances life. Like this is your, you go from the potter's wheel to the kitchen to the photo studio, all in one day, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we should end on this one, and I guess, if it's okay with you, I can put this the PDF of our slides in our show notes so people can click through them.
Yeah, that's fine.
I really want people to order this book, and it is I love the idea that it can be a companion to life in the studio. Really, you know, it's an artist's life, but it's a gardener's life. And I really
Right.
love that you've shared that. And here are your precious spirited iris with some gorgeous peonies, including, I think, a tree peony. So kind of
Right. And
fitting to end on this because this is what I'm anticipating right now in my garden.
okay.
Frances, you've mentioned how much of your love of bearded iris. So this is a beautiful arrangement in which you kind of make the iris rise up above the peonies, but what a charming
Oh, thanks. Well, again,
collection.
that's one of those arrangements where I wanted everybody to get their place in the sun. I didn't want to have the bearded iris hidden behind all the peonies, so I just made them taller so they could stand up.
But the composition with all these sort of, they're kind of watercolor like palette of the petals. They just,
Yeah.
I can see this on a canvas quite easily. Maybe
Well,
one of your masters would have painted this.
yeah, and my friend Dominique Browning always calls these colors Parisian ladies underwear. Parisian ladies underwear.
Okay, I love it. I can picture that too, and all the ruffles.
Right.
So, Frances, do you have some book events coming up that you want? We mentioned the event in San Francisco in May. Can people find other appearances on your website, on your calendar?
Yes. I have a number of book events happening. I have a book event in New York City on May 20th. I'm going to actually be out in Los Angeles early May for a book event at Nikki Kehoe for the Design LA. And then I'm doing the Sakonnet Plant Fair on May 3rd in Rhode Island. And then I'm doing a book signing in San Francisco at March, that beautiful store, on the 28th. And I'm doing a workshop with TJ McGrath in New Jersey in June. So all of these things are on my website. And then I'm having the exhibition that I mentioned with the Frankel Gallery, and also a big exhibition at the Berkshire Botanical Garden in August. And I've been doing, speaking of early photography, I've been doing a whole set of botanical photos using the platinum palladium process, which is one of those old photography processes from the 1874.
And will those be in an exhibition, or what are you planning?
Yeah, they're going to be, so that's at the Berkshire Botanical Garden.
Oh, okay. Oh, how fun. Oh my gosh.
So those are going to be on the wall. And then I'm going to do a lot of terracotta pots that hopefully will be planted with some of the material from the garden at the Berkshire Botanical Garden.
I love how it's all coming together and that you're able to bring all of your passions together and integrated into your work of art as in an exhibition. Thank you so much, Frances. I could keep talking to you forever, but I'll just have to find time to do a follow-up. But congratulations on the book. It's beautiful. I can't wait to get it into people's hands.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And we'll share all of Frances's links and social places and calendar in our show notes at slowflowerspodcast.com, as well as a link to order your copy of the book.
Perfect.
Okay. Thanks, Frances.
Okay.